Hi, I'm Jamie Caldwell. I'm a creative director at Edelman. Ultimately, there was a sort of I guess, a brand challenge and also a product challenge for us. And I think realistically, part of the issue is that a load of brands that were normally known for sort of more being more fashion than performance had really sort of entered the running category, and very strongly in the like previous years. And the running audience that we obviously sort of target with ASICS no longer really see them as the clear winner in the performance running category. And this is obviously, I'm not going to name the certain campaigns that are out there, but obviously this is due to sort of some real game changer campaigns by other brands. So I think and then at this point, actually ASICS was actually bringing out a new groundbreaking running shoe that's actually designed to save you energy as you run. This is quite an impressive piece of kit, but also like, how do we get out there in a very, very noisy and crowded market and sort of reassert them as like the go-to brand when it comes to sort of high performance running. We were basically tasked to sort of like bring the drive sales around the energy saving glide ride shoe and sort of build brand preference amongst runners for ASICS, basically. But I think another part of the issue on this one as well is that when you're sort of talking about an energy saving shoe, the problem is that that's such a broad term, or energy is such a broad term, should I say. And like, I think the part of the task for us is like, how do we bring that to life in a way that all runners would understand, that all runners would get excited about, and then obviously drive a lot of fame for the brand at the same time as well. ASIC's target audience is real runners. They care about, like performance running and like challenging themselves. These are like these kind of people that run a couple of times a week. Like running is part of what really makes them. And I think there's something that's a little bit at odds a bit with the way that a lot of runners feel and the way that a lot of sports communications are out there sort of are focused. And I think if you look at the way that sort of a lot of sporting ads are focused, they really are obsessed with finish lines and beating records and absolutely smashing it. But to sort of give you a bit of background on ASICS, most people don't realize that ASICS actually stands for Anima Sana in Corpore Sano. I hope I haven't destroyed Latin there, but it basically means a sound mind in a sound body. So rather than focusing on short-term gains, they really focus on the sort of long-term, lifelong gains and a sort of a sound mind in a sound body. So with this sort of thought in mind, we were actually thinking like, potentially, what if finish lines, instead of inspiring people to run further and harder, are actually something that are holding athletes and runners back from truly knowing what their bodies and minds are capable of. And obviously with this new shoe that makes you a more efficient runner, this potentially is the one time where we've got a shoe that really can test that and put that to the limits as well. So what we actually did was create the first race without a finish line. So we went out to the Utah Salt Flats, and like, this was a bit of a challenge in itself, which is actually like trying to find a place geographically where we could build a race that had no limits, because ultimately a lot of the time people are going to know where they're going to track miles in their head. Even if they don't know roughly where that finish line is, they're going to know, right, okay, if I'm running across London, once I get into West London, it's not that far before I've done, I'm just thinking out like 10 miles or whatever it may be. So we actually had to sort of go and find somewhere that removed those markers, that removed those mental barriers, that removed those mental flagpoles where people could go like, okay, right, this is how far I run. So we went out to the Utah Salt Flats, absolutely massive space, completely flat. Obviously, it's, been the home of many testing grounds for engineering achievements throughout human history. So we thought that this was like the perfect place to sort of test our, latest technology in the glide ride shoe. So we invited 23 athletes, influencers, journalists, everyone out to the Bonneville Salt Flats, and there was like no route, no pacemakers, and no finish line. And basically there was this sort of circular start line. They were set off in every direction, and then we could just see how far they could run, to make sure that like this pace was like a fair test, and like some people just didn't really like slow their speed right down and then just sort of almost like walk as far as they could. We basically assigned every runner based off their average pace, and then based off that we knew how often they would normally run and what they would normally do at that normal pace that they go for a run with, so we'd be able to tell like whether they're going past their normal finish line. When the whistle began, like the race sort of dropped and they basically ran, and then they basically would be out there and we would track their paces using sort of like GPS and like satellites. And once their pace dropped below a certain thing, we knew they couldn't really run anymore, and then their race would be over. But ultimately they could run and run and run and run. And I think it was something like 80% of runners out there actually ran further than they'd ever, run before. So it was actually really great experiment to sort of see not only like what the shoe could do, but actually what were the sort of limits of human potential when you actually remove those sort of mental barriers, and physical barriers actually, which is the finish line itself. Quite quickly always go straight to sales, but I think there was a further reaching impact of this, which is just the broader brand perception and the way people viewed ASICS as a brand, even if they weren't the sort of runner that potentially would buy Glide Ride, which was great. So like actually just seeing that rise in perception, seeing publications that, let's be honest, wouldn't normally pick up an article about a shoe release. So like if you're talking like your general newspapers or like broader magazines that aren't just running magazines, they were like incredibly interested, because ultimately I think we had something that really culturally resonated with a lot of people, whether you were sort of a casual runner or like a sort of more dedicated runner, which was a thing of like, does the finish line hold me back? Is this something that, like, am I the only one that doesn't want to go out there and try and break records, that actually maybe I just go out there and run for myself? So I think there was a bit of a deeper meaning in there that resonated with a lot of people. So obviously we saw a rise in brand perception. We saw people sort of socially interacting and seeing this as resonated with them on a deeper level than just a normal sort of glamorous advert or a celebrity endorsement.